Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show. Coming up today, Spain is on course for its hottest April day ever, with forecasters predicting up to 40 degrees this week. The UK's biggest bioenergy supplier is told by its own advisors to stop calling biomass carbon neutral. And the figures that show Brits are throwing away 80 million items of perfectly good food every week. Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we track the changes to our world and investigate some of the potential solutions to the climate crisis. Now, Spain could experience its hottest day in April ever, with forecasters predicting temperatures could reach 40 degrees this week. And the country's agriculture minister has asked the European Union for emergency funding to help farmers cope with extreme drought conditions. Well, our climate change and energy correspondent, Hannah Thomas-Peter, joins us now from Seville. So, Hannah, temperatures expected of up to 40 degrees this week.
Yes, and it's just so uncomfortable to be in. It's 35, 36 degrees here in Seville, possibly a peak of temperatures tomorrow in this city and a little bit further inland as well. If it creeps above 37.4, that will be a record, but it's really nothing to celebrate. This is way too early in the season for temperatures like this. The city is more than used to heat. It's used to coping with dramatically high, sustained temperatures through the summer months. But we've been talking to people who have gathered for the city's annual special festival about how early this has come and how worried they are about the impacts on ordinary life in the city, about being able to get around easily, about being able to work outside. People generally don't emerge from their homes until 8, 9 o'clock at night when the temperatures start dipping. So there's an impact on public health, an impact on productivity, and we've also spoken to some tourists visiting the city who are really struggling in this heat. Now, the city's mayor has said that climate change is going to make this city hotter and hotter. Of course, we know that climate change is driving increasingly frequent, increasingly severe weather events like heat and drought. And it's that drought bit that's causing real problems around this city and across this region. Europe had its hottest, driest summer ever last year. The ground is parched and dry. It is absorbing heat and creating this Iberian oven effect. And farmers are now genuinely worried about being able to water their crops. Some have given up planting entirely, and there are concerns about the availability of water for people for drinking. There may well be extensive water rationing measures in place come this summer.
Hannah, thank you. Now, the UK's biggest supplier of bioenergy has been warned by its own scientists to stop describing biomass as carbon neutral. The Drax power station in North Yorkshire burns pellets made from low-grade leftover wood to produce energy. It was converted from a coal power station on the basis that doing so neutralises carbon emissions because new trees are planted to absorb them.
Drax has been running for a decade, and the whole premise on which Drax was converted to biomass and bioenergy, and the basis on which it's been given government subsidies for doing that, was that bioenergy is very low carbon or zero carbon. And so to be opening that question up now is certainly a surprising development.
Well, our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook, has been investigating this. She joins us now. Hi, Victoria. So what's been happening here?
Yeah, so this is really all about biomass, which you've just explained, which means burning wood to generate electricity, and that is classed here in the UK and in the EU as renewable. And the idea is that you plant new trees that suck up the emissions, which effectively neutralises them or zeros them. Now, what I've learned is that Drax, which is the largest bioenergy supplier in the UK, its own independent scientific advisors have said, actually, you should stop calling it carbon neutral and even reassess your criteria for doing so. And as we've just heard, some are saying that's a little bit surprising. Drax has been doing this for 10 years, so it's had time to sort of get its criteria straight, to be revisiting that. And that is the basis on which it receives huge government subsidies, around 1.7 million a day last year. Now, the government and Drax have very strongly rejected any suggestion that there's anything wrong with the way that biomass is classed in the UK, saying it has helped us get rid of fossil fuels. It has boosted our energy security by having this extra supply in the mix. But and they say that also it can be done in a way that benefits the environment or has negligible impact as long as those strict sustainability criteria are in place. But certainly this raises some questions, some difficult questions, some are saying, about, well, should we actually be counting some of these emissions against our tally, which would make net zero harder to achieve? That's not going to be desirable for the government. And this all matters because it's emissions from things like biomass, but emissions in general that are driving climate change and having these impacts, such as the drought that we've just been hearing about.
OK, Victoria, thank you. Well, some of today's other news now. And Asia is experiencing record high temperatures this month, including Thailand, where temperatures have soared to 45.4 degrees Celsius. Authorities have issued warnings for extreme heat and have advised residents in many parts of the country, including the capital, Bangkok, to stay indoors. But there is likely to be some relief as the temperature is forecast to fall this week ahead of the rainy season in May. Experts have warned that water storage levels in parts of Italy are less than half their normal levels. After little rain and meagre alpine snowfalls over winter, the country is bracing for a second consecutive year of severe drought. Reservoirs and lakes are at extremely low levels, threatening agricultural production. Two sites have been named as the first places to benefit from a £38 million scheme aimed at increasing rainforests in the British Isles. The Wildlife Trust says its Atlantic Rainforest Recovery Programme hopes to restore the ecosystems, which now cover less than 1% of the islands. The first sites will be on the Isle of Man and in northwest Wales.
You can't just create a rainforest out of nothing. It probably takes decades and decades before rainforest begins to establish. But what it will do, that young woodland, as it begins to grow, it sucks carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And that obviously helps us with our climate change goals.
Consumers may be spending more than ever on food, but new research suggests we're also wasting more food than ever before. A survey by the food-saving app Too Good To Go has found that every week Brits throw away 18 million items of meat and dairy, as well as more than 30 million items of perfectly edible fruit and veg, and 22 million items of bread and pasta. Well, joining me now is Sophie Truman. She's the MD for Too Good To Go in the UK and Ireland. Hi, Sophie. Thank you so much for talking to us. Why are people throwing away all this food?
It's a very good question. I think the challenge we have today is there is so much abundance and choice available for us as consumers when we go to the shop. So I think that leads to us being slightly picky, maybe not choosing some items because they might be slightly damaged or not looking the perfect way. And this can lead to a lot of waste too. And then fundamentally, when we're actually at home, a lot of people aren't aware of the difference between use by dates and best before dates. And that's where a lot of waste also happens at home.
So what is the difference?
So use by is for meat and dairy items. That means that after that date, it's not safe to eat. But best before is, frankly, a whole different kettle of fish. And that really is just an indication and a suggestion. So it means that the item is at its very best before the date, but after the date, it normally is perfectly fine to eat. So we really urge people to use their common sense. Look, smell, taste, don't waste food just because it's past the best before. I think milk is a prime example. You think, how many times do you throw away, pour milk down the drain because it's past the date on the packet, when actually if you smell it, it's probably perfectly fine to use.
Is that why some supermarkets just simply aren't putting a best before date on some of their items now?
Yeah, so we've seen a great movement in the past couple of months with many of the large retailers removing best before dates from things like fruit and vegetables. And that's a great step in the right direction. But the sad thing is that still only 13% of us are using our senses when it comes to best before items. And, this whole program is talking about climate change. And one of the staggering statistics is that actually food waste contributes to more greenhouse gas emissions than the entirety of the aviation industry. So there's a lot more we should and could be doing at home and in store to save that food from going to waste.
The research, was there a difference, or did you see a difference in the way people use food, the way people throw it away, in terms of where they are in the country or how old they are?
Yes, we did. So looking across the UK, it was actually Londoners which threw away the most, sadly, with nearly half of us throwing away perfectly edible food each week. And we tend to see that the older generations are much better at saving food versus the younger generation. So there definitely is a lot more education that needs to happen.
OK, Sophie, thank you. So use your senses. Thanks for talking to us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, now, before we go, just a reminder that you can watch The Climate Show with Tom Heap this weekend. That's on Saturday and Sunday. It's at 3 p.m. and then again at 7:30 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from us today. Join us again tomorrow on The Daily Climate Show.